Hello, and welcome to Philosophy 220 Ethics at Northern Virginia Community College. My name is Stephanie Semler, and I'll be walking you through some of the elements of the online course that you'll need to pay some special attention to. First, take note that for this course, you will have what we call a reader. It is a compilation of public domain philosophy texts that we've made available to you free of charge. The reader will be downloadable from your Blackboard shell. You can print it, you can read it on a device, even your phone. If you have any questions about the reader, please make a point to contact your instructor. A couple of items having to do with course policy. Note that late work or makeup work will only be accepted without penalty under the following circumstances: a medical reason with a note from your doctor or healthcare professional, a school-sanctioned event with a note from a faculty member or administrator, or bereavement or other family emergency. You will want to contact your instructor as soon as possible in order to make adequate arrangements. Any other late work will lose 5% of its total grade for each calendar day that it's late. That includes weekends and holidays. Assignments will then receive a grade of 0 after 14 calendar days. Please note that the college provides many support services to students. Just because you have an online class, it doesn't mean that those resources are not available to you. Please make a point to seek out the resources that you need. And if you have any questions about how to reach those resources, please make a point to talk to your instructor. Academic integrity is an important part of any college course. Please take note of the definitions here of violations of academic integrity according to the student handbook. When you matriculated to NOVA and became a student, you agreed to abide by these codes of student conduct. I also want to point out to you that the discussion boards are an important aspect of the online course. Essentially, the discussion board is meant to parallel the course interaction that you would have in a face-to-face course. There are 4 discussion forums, one for each unit, and these assignments are designed to help you develop your ability to explain and critically evaluate the positions of the philosophers that we're studying. Please note that in order to receive full credit on the discussion posts, you must post no fewer than 5 posts. You can post more, but no fewer than 5 on 5 different calendar days, and that will be according to Blackboard's timestamp. In addition to that, while you'll want to keep each individual post to roughly around 300 words, all of your posts, all 5 of your posts for each unit must reach a minimum word total of 1,000 words. In addition to that, the criteria that will be used in scoring the discussion forums can be found on the discussion rubric available in your course shell. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to your instructor. I'll say a few words about philosophy and then ethics specifically. Philosophy can be a little bit difficult to define. Looking back to the earliest beginnings of philosophy based on the texts that we have available historically, what we see is a turn away from purely supernatural or religious explanations for, in the case of Western philosophy, natural phenomena. In the case of the Far Eastern tradition, in the personification of Lao Tzu, we see a methodological approach to political and ethical problems. You'll see how those 2 traditions developed a little bit differently. So in some ways, it's a little bit more accurate to think about philosophy as a method as opposed to specifically a subject matter. Philosophy can be done on any subject matter. What sets it apart from other kinds of inquiry are that it is focused on the use of reason and observation as a way to reach explanations and theories. This means that philosophy uses logic as its primary tool of inquiry. This is a broad overview of the basic branches of philosophy. As you can see, ethics, which will be our focus for this course, is under the axiology or value theory subdiscipline. Note, of course, that for all of these subdisciplines, there are other more finely specialized subdisciplines. We'll be spending most of our time with ethics. However, you'll see that there are other areas where there's overlap or connections between ethics and the other sub-branches of philosophy. First, I want to take a note about terminology when we talk about ethics. Sometimes you'll see the words ethics and morals used interchangeably. Usually, in English, what we mean by morals are the sets of beliefs and guidelines that individuals use in their day-to-day actions. Accordingly, ethics is what we usually use to describe our conscious reflection on those beliefs. Again, it's also typical for these two words to be used interchangeably. When we're talking about ethical theory, we'll be talking about the conscious reflection part. So we'll be looking at our moral beliefs and then asking why those beliefs are adequate or not. There are also other levels of moral reasoning. There's a very abstract level. So here on this sheet, we're going from the most abstract to the most concrete. Metaethics looks at the nature of moral inquiry itself, asks what makes moral claims or moral statements true. You'll see us touch on this when we talk about the philosophy of David Hume, for example. Ethical theories are where we're going to spend most of our time. These are theories about how we can determine what's morally right and wrong and why. Codes of ethics, on the other hand, are specific sets of rules that apply in particular settings. When we talk about our philosophers that are coming from a religious tradition, you'll see where there's a code of ethics that applies in particular settings. Many religions have such codes. In addition to that, you'll also note areas of life such as professions. So for example, if you're a doctor or a nurse or an attorney, there's a code of ethics that goes along with that profession that applies in particular settings. And then, of course, we have our day-to-day moral reasoning. Again, this is reasoning about interpersonal behavior based on, in most cases, a combination of reason and customs. How do we know that we're dealing with moral questions? You'll want to look for these kinds of words. Some when we're talking about subject matter content, some we're talking about the perspective that we approach that content. So for example, if we're talking about human actions, duties, moral obligations, things like rights, particular kinds of moral characters, the concept of harm and suffering, there's a pretty good chance we're in moral territory. Likewise, if the perspective is designed to be impartial, universalizable, or coming from a point of view of compassion, then it's likely to be that we're in moral territory. Since we'll be looking at moral theory specifically, you'll want to keep in mind why we have moral theories. We want moral theories to be able to not only adequately describe what we do in our everyday moral reasoning, but to also give us explanatory power for that mode of reasoning. How do we argue for the value of those rules that we follow? Hopefully, a good moral theory will also add persuasive power to the views that we have based on reasoning and give us a way to examine the moral beliefs that we're operating from, which are from a deeper background point of view. This is a very, very slight overview of what we'll be looking at over the course of the term. Specifically, you'll be looking at utilitarianism, for example, which is a form of consequentialism. We'll be looking at rule-based ethics, natural law theories. We'll be touching very obliquely on contract theory. We'll spend a fair amount of time with virtue ethics and ethics that are oriented on compassion. I hope you enjoy the course. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me and, of course, always to your instructor.